Let's talk all about AI in business. It's hosted by Brent Muller. Welcome to the Future Proof Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of the Future Proof Podcast. I'm going to be announcing my guest here in 1 second, but just welcome to, for those people just joining, welcome to Future Proof. This is the podcast where we decode how founders and execs are scaling smarter by using systems, AI, automation. So if you're looking to future proof your business, you're in the right place. But let me introduce Perry today. So my guest is Perry Boyle from MITS Capital, and he's doing a lot of exciting stuff, and of all places, the Ukraine. So Perry, welcome. Thank you for spending some time with us today.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Awesome. So Perry, as we always do, let's jump right in. Let's talk about your background first and kind of your journey leading up to starting MITS Capital.
Yeah, well, I had a very good upbringing. I grew up in Connecticut, public school kid, ended up going to college at Stanford, graduated in 3 years, and then went to Wall Street, worked at Salomon Brothers in corporate finance back in the 80s, worked on financing satellites and things like that. And then went back to business school at Dartmouth to get an MBA, tried consulting, didn't like it, went back into investment banking, switched over to equity
I found
research.
your sweet spot in investment banking, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I like fast-paced environments, and I like working with consequential decisions. I didn't really like working as a team player, which is kind of ironic, but I really liked the individual performance characteristics of investment banking and also equity research.
Yeah.
But at one point, I was a founding partner of Thomas Weisel Partners, and I wasn't really happy about how we were running our equity research department. So I volunteered to fix it, and I ended up running it. And I found I liked it. And I found I
that's good.
Took pleasure in the success of other people, which wasn't something I had been self-aware about. And so from that point, and that was in about 99, that was like 2000-ish. Yeah. From that point, I was a professional manager for the rest of my career. I kind of stepped back from production and went into overhead. But I always felt that when you're in overhead, you're a tax on the producers. So you have to provide them with a return on the tax they're paying. Otherwise, what's your purpose, right?
Exactly.
So we grew Thomas Weisel Partners to the 12th largest investment bank in the country pretty quickly, one of the fastest ramps in financial services history. And then I spent 6 years there and switched over to the buy side. And I joined Steve Cohen at SAC Capital at the end of 2004. I thought I'd be there a year or two, and 15 years later, I was still there. I retired from there at the end of 2019, and moved to beautiful Sun Valley, Idaho, and was pretty happy in my retirement. Was working on more charitable stuff. I helped grow and lead a nonprofit in Africa, BOMA, and transforming that into what it's now today, the largest provider of poverty graduation programs that's based in Africa.
That's amazing.
Yep. And I just stepped out of the chairmanship of that at the end of last year, but I transitioned into Ukraine thanks to Mr. Putin. So, I was sitting here perfectly happy, and Russia invades Ukraine, and I come to the realization that the world that I thought I lived in isn't the world that I live in. I thought America was the hegemonic superpower, the protector of democracies, had made a commitment to Ukraine twice and wasn't living up to that commitment. And my kids are grown. My family's taken care of. I'm going over there. I'm going to Ukraine. I'm going to go fight in Ukraine. So I signed up to fight with the International Legion. And I'm filling out the web form, and it's like previous military experience, none. Heavy weapons experience, none. Light weapons experience, none. I'm afraid of guns. But I figured, they take me as an ambulance driver or a cook or something, and I'd figure it out, and in 6 months I'd be a general or something. But I was considered unfit for military service in Ukraine by the Ukrainian government, and but they bothered to look me up on LinkedIn, which something I anticipated, and they said, "Oh, this guy knows something about money. He's worked on Wall Street. We need a lot of money." And so they asked me, "Can you work on bringing capital into Ukraine's defense industry?" And I said, well, how hard can that
Very
be? That
interesting.
can't be hard. You're at war. You're the most innovative country in the world. You're the low-cost producer. You've got a massive defense industrial base. This will be easy. Wrong. I
Is
feel like,
anything easy, Perry? I mean,
yeah. But I teamed up with two Ukrainian partners, one who had worked in the defense industry, another who has worked in the tech industry, both who had worked in the government of Ukraine, very well connected, 30-something guys, Ukrainian patriots. And we built a company called MITS Capital, MITS. It means might in Ukrainian. I didn't pick it, but they did. And then we started small. So we started with a defense technology accelerator in Kyiv. We partnered with Dan Rice at American University Kyiv. It's the only American-style graduate school in Ukraine.
Okay.
And in February of 2024, we just put out a call for applications. And we got 60 applications for 6 spots. We took 6 companies. We started in May of 24. One company didn't make it through the process, so we graduated 5 at the end of the summer. And it's a very Y Combinator style thing. We thank you, Y Combinator. Like, they put everything up on their website. They encourage people to use what they've developed. It's a very generous firm.
Right.
And we basically cloned it for Ukraine, for the defense technology sector in Ukraine. We started a second cohort in November. That's 6 companies. They're all doing great. And then we also invested in 2 other companies that were operating in Ukraine that were run by Americans who had seen the war, thought they could help, went over and built up companies. One is a long-range strike drone, the low-cost producer in the world of that. And then the other is a optical guidance company for cruise missiles and long-range drones that doesn't require a GPS signal. So that's 13 companies in the portfolio. We did that within a year. That makes us the largest private investor in Ukrainian defense tech.
Wow.
Which is a little
really
scary.
Fast. Yeah.
A little scary. And I know nothing about defense. I know nothing about Ukraine. I know nothing about venture capital. How is it possible that someone like me just sees this opportunity and nobody from the Silicon Valley Defense Investors Network or the UK Defense Investors Network or the European Defense, none of them are doing this in Ukraine?
Yeah.
Like,
why?
How is that? Because there's a war on. It's scary.
Yeah.
Your wife's not happy when you go. Your kids aren't happy when you go. And it's a pain in the ass to get to. Like, you can't fly to Kyiv. You fly to Warsaw and take a train. It's a 17-hour train ride. But that created the opportunity for someone as unqualified as me to go in and I met with every government ministry. My partners are pretty well connected there. Mm-hmm. And my point to them is, I'm the wrong person to be doing this, but I'm here. So I'm what you got.
And you stepped up. Yeah.
And this is what you got. And I'm committed. I'm wearing the Ukrainian hat. I'm wearing my, Ukrainian work uniform. I've got the Ukrainian bracelets on. Like, I've converted to Ukrainianism. It's been I don't have, I'm not married to a Ukraine, but I have my work team in Ukraine. They're like my family, my Ukrainian family. I've got 12 people that we work with in Kyiv, and they're super people. They're really committed to their country, and they're building a new country.
Amazing.
So we also provide advisory services. We've got 5 clients of more established Ukrainian companies in the defense industry there. And then we're working on a pretty cool thing, kind of a deep tech research lab, where we're signing an exclusive relationship with one of the Army Corps in Ukraine, where we will be their partner in testing out battlefield innovations. So, one of the things that's broken in NATO is the link between the soldier and the defense contractor, right?
And why is that,
not
do you think?
Bureaucracy, politics, industry consolidation, and I really think it's the cost plus mentality, which, there's no interest for a U.S. defense prime to be cost effective. Like, there's no incentive to do that. Right. And whereas in Ukraine, which is resource constrained, fighting a war, fighting a literal arms race with Russia, You know,
Right.
come up with something, Russia comes up with something to counter it, they come up with something to counter the counter. You know, there's this, and those cycles are weeks. They're not months and they're not years. Like the US defense industry is built on 5-year procurement cycles.
Right.
Right?
Right.
That's not, that doesn't work in an actual shooting war.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, we don't know if and when, but I'm sure there's a when, right?
There's a when. I don't know when
yeah.
the when is though. Yeah.
Right. So what does it do to the business between now and then? And then when that does happen, what does it do?
Yeah, so sadly, it works either way. So if you have enough patience, like if the war continues, I keep finding really cool, innovative companies,
Yeah.
but it's hard to finance them. It's hard to commercialize them. It's hard to scale them because there's almost no Western capital going directly into Ukraine. But the day that you can land a commercial airliner at the Kyiv airport, it's going to be a feeding frenzy because Ukraine needs so much capital investment. And that's when it will be much easier to get financing, working capital, customer orders, because I think the confidence and conviction, once you go see it, it's not what people think. Like people think that Ukraine is like, you know, a backward Eastern European country. It's not. It's a
Right.
very sophisticated country. You know, it's the world's leading agricultural exporter per capita. It feeds 12% of the world. It's got a huge, highly technical agricultural industry there. It's got mining. It's got aerospace. It was the defense industrial base for the Soviet Union. Like they have 900 defense plants at one point. Like the food is good. Everybody works really hard. You know.
Yeah. And like we were talking before the podcast. I mean, I know tons of clients that I've had that had teams in the Ukraine before the
Absolutely.
war, and now they've had to a lot of them relocated to Poland and Romania and neighboring
Yes.
countries. And we were talking about whether or not they come back, but they were a tech hub as well.
Well, Boeing still has 1,200 engineers in Ukraine.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Tell me how, as you're seeing this, right? Again, our podcast very much centered on emerging tech. How do you see emerging tech, whether it's AI, whether it's automation, it's the drones? There's so many places that comes into play. How is that shaping not only what's going on in the ground there, but as you look into the future?
Yeah, well, I think this generative AI they're the new thing. You know, the internet was the new thing in the mid 90s.
Yeah.
This is the new thing. It's going to unlock massive productivity increases. I personally, I think it's improved my personal productivity dramatically. But let's take one of the companies I'm invested in. It. They make a guidance system for long range strike drones and cruise missiles. It uses optical information, infrared, visible spectrum. It takes it in through some cameras. It puts it through an NVIDIA chip, one of these chips that are used in the AI labs.
Yep.
And it combines what it's seeing with every possible map of the territory that it has to figure out where the heck is this drone. Right. And how fast is it going? Is it on target? It can, at a fairly low altitude, it can process at about 0.5 Mach, right? The engines can take it up to over Mach 1, right? So if it could process at Mach 1, it would be processing at Mach 1. And that's kind of what we're trying to do right now, right? So we're iterating to up the speed, and I think we're at 0.7 Mach right now at that company. Again, the farther higher you are, the less processing speed you need, right? But you want to go low because you want to go underneath where the anti-drone stuff can get you.
Right.
And we're getting there. We're getting there pretty quickly. And then we'll apply it to celestial. Like if you think about it, if you're flying over water, what are your landmarks?
Yep.
There aren't any below you. They're above you. It's the sun. At night, it's the stars. So applying this to celestial navigation is kind of the next iteration. And people are working on this very hard today.
Yeah.
So that you don't need radio signals, so that you have autonomous capability in the drone. And then we're using autonomous targeting. What does a tank look like? Okay, well, let's compare that to all the images of tanks we have in the database. okay, that's a tank. We can say that with 98% confidence. We're going to blow that up.
Yeah.
Okay. How close can we get to it? So we got a laser on there. And then the laser zeroes in on the object and hones you in on the object. You've got a gimbal on there, which is very sensitive. So a lot of technology goes into these things. And in war, speed is everything, right? Because
Yeah.
it is a little arms race. Every innovation you have, your drone's going to crash on Russian territory. The Russians are going to deconstruct it. They're going to send it to China for reverse engineering, and it's going to come back to them in 3 weeks. And then they're going to be using your stuff against you. So you have to constantly be iterating and finding continuous improvement.
It's a little exhausting when you think about the arms race, isn't it?
Well, it's depressing as a human being, to think we're putting this much energy into murdering other humans.
Yes.
But, Putin could stop this war tomorrow, just go home, right? The Ukrainians want it over.
Yeah, I think most people want it over. Yeah. And let's hope that happens. Hope and pray.
Yeah. But I've been using the commercially available models for pretty cool stuff, like, comparing capabilities of NATO war material against what we're producing in Ukraine, because it can do research on this stuff really quickly.
Yeah, that deep research is very cool.
It's very cool. And I've been using it for wargaming, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, so tell me about that.
Yeah, well, so, one of my theses is that when a dictator tells you what he's going to do, you should probably pay attention, okay?
Yes.
Like Saddam said he was going to invade Kuwait, and he did. Houthis said they were going to invade, and they did. Well, Putin in 2007 laid out his grand plan for restoring the Russian Empire, and he's been executing on that plan. Ukraine is just one
of, right?
One of many actions in that. And another key action in that is to take Finland, to take the Baltics, and to take half of Poland. He calls it the fourth and final partition of Poland. So, can he take Finland? That's an interesting question. What would it take for him to take Finland? And, the Finnish defense plan is no secret.
Right.
They have 900,000 men who have been trained, who are mobilizable within 72 hours, but they only have 21,000 people under arms actively at any one point. It's 150 miles from the Russian military base to Helsinki. It's not that far.
Yeah, that's not far
at all. Across, I think, 16 or 18 bridges, each one of which the Finns have mined, right? Mm-hmm. So if you were the Russians, how would you do it? If you were the Finns, how would you defend it?
Right.
And something's changed versus when the Finns created their defense plan, there were no drones. And now there are drones. The Russian troops are trained in drones. Their platoons are organized for drone warfare.
Right.
They can produce more drones than NATO can produce, right? So how is that going to impact how fast they can get to Helsinki, and can they hold it?
Yeah.
And, my models are saying, well, not, my prompting,
simulators, right? Yeah.
Simulation, say that it will take them a month to get to Helsinki, that they will be able to take Helsinki, but they may not be able to hold it. Okay, that's useful information. But then you apply that to the Baltics, where there are actually more soldiers under arms in the Baltics. There's actually, I think, 32,000 between the three countries. The rest of their populations are not as mobilizable. NATO only has a 40,000 person rapid deployment force. It is not trained in drone warfare. Saw the personnel carrier get trapped in the mud in Lithuania. A lot happens, everyone has a plan until somebody punches them in the face, right? NATO does have a plan to defend the Estonian border. Russia knows what that plan is. And it's
it's not
130 miles from St. Petersburg to Tallinn, right? So it's 4 days. It's 4 days for Russia to get to the Polish border. And so that's the kind of stuff that you can play around with. You can say, well, what if U.S. troops are trained in drones? Or what if, Russia doesn't? You can say, well, how many tanks can they redeploy? All sorts of things that you can run with the scenarios, and it's kind of fun.
No kidding.
I mean, scary, but fun.
So let me ask you, let me kind of turn it back, because I was thinking about something you said earlier. Before pre-retirement, when you were doing equity management, right?
Yep.
And equity research.
Yep.
How would Would those simulations, could you do the same thing?
See, we
Would
didn't have
were
this.
you, are you like, man, I wish I would have had that?
Oh, I do wish I would have had it. So, we spent a lot of money on data
Yeah.
at SAC in point 72, like a lot. I can't tell you how much, but it's more than, take how much you think, and it was more than that.
Yeah.
And we spent a lot of money trying to draw insights and inferences from that data.
Right. Yeah.
And we used machine learning to do it, but nothing close to the capabilities of ChatGPT or Grok today.
Yeah.
And it would save a lot of time just in generating basic models on companies. It would save a lot of time at running scenarios. Like if this happens, if tariffs happen, what does that mean for this company or that company? Like that's what I would be doing today.
Absolutely.
What does this mean for Bungie? What does this mean for Cargill? What does this mean for, the shipping lines? Like every company is affected by this, and you can run those through the LLMs a lot faster than you can do just sitting around.
And not only that, I was thinking you could take that a step further when you saw vulnerabilities of companies, right? Let's say it was from the tariffs, then you could say, how would they bolster it? And it'd probably be through acquisition. And now you have, hey, if this company acquires one of these, like you start to get insider information without really trying.
Yeah. But I had this phrase when I was managing that area. It was like, you either learn how to harness the computer or you're going to get replaced by it. And I think that's very true for AI, right?
Yeah. More true, right? Yeah.
More true because it can reason, right?
Yes.
It can reason, and that it can't maybe reason as well as you or I can yet.
Right.
But it can reason, and so using it, and it can certainly research and process faster than I can.
Yes. Right.
So if you're not using it, you're going to lose.
Yeah.
Right. So, we were in the game for alpha, excess returns over what the market generates. And alpha is by definition a zero-sum game. If point 72 gets it, that means Citadel's not getting it. There's a fixed amount of it over a time period. And you have to be using AI, or you're not fulfilling your fiduciary responsibility to your investors.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. I love that your take on this, because that's what we try to shed light on, how to use it in best and highest use cases, and the simulators that you just kind of walk through in both defense and in managing assets and hedge fund work. Both make tremendous sense. But you're right. If you're not using it, you're going to get replaced by it.
Yeah. And, I'm just kind of, chipping the tip of the iceberg on, the applications and the use cases. But one of the things I really like is what I think of as red team, blue team stuff with it. You run the same scenario on Grok and ChatGPT, and then you see how they differ and what they come out with, and you can pit them against each other. Say, okay, Grok, you're going to be blue team, Chat, you're red team. Here's the scenario, and you see what they come up with, and then you switch.
Yeah.
And through that iteration, you get insights, and you see, and the patterns start to emerge, and you see where the blockages are or where the leverage points are. That's really, you can tell I'm very excited about this. Like, I love learning,
fun.
And it accelerates your learning pace, and it takes away a lot of the drudgery of things.
Yes. And that is what I think we were talking before the podcast. That's exactly what I tell people is if you do nothing else, whatever your day-to-day, whatever industry you're in, just have a little notepad, and wherever you see drudgery, monotonous, start there. And if you need help, I'm saying my team will help you build that, because it's easy. I mean, it's not easy for everybody, but I'm saying once you build it once, you can recoup that time, and then you can go do way more productive things with your time.
Well, Brett, let's think about this for a second, okay? Because you just used a word that is very core to my business philosophy, which is time. Okay. There's two axes that we operate on, time and money, and we're turning time into money, right? We're turning our cycle time and our computer brain and our bodies into economic value.
Yes.
So anything that you can do to increase your return on time, that's what you should be doing. And you shouldn't be doing the things that don't generate a return on your time. So I'm hiring an intern for the summer to help me do this, like to analyze what you're talking about. Like I'm going to set her at this, that, and the other thing. And I'm going to say, okay, well, how do we use AI to take the time out of this?
Yes.
And,
everybody should be doing what you're saying.
it's like pitch books, okay, well, we have all our pitch materials, we have all our company materials in a database. Like, how do we use AI to go into that database and create the most compelling pitch book? And you can customize it for who you're pitching to. Like, you can say, here's the hot buttons of the audience. This is what the audience is interested in. How would you? So, for example, I'm going to be pitching Ukraine's defense industrial base to Mexico, right? Because Mexico is fighting a civil war.
Yep.
The cartel is, in some cases, better armed than the government.
Absolutely.
They are fully drone enabled now. And I need to convince the Mexican government that they need to partner with Ukraine's innovation in this space to help them win the cartel war, right? And yes, we'll make some of this stuff in Ukraine, or we'll license it. Mexico, or we'll license it to Mexico. But, so I want to do a pitch deck for the Minister of the Interior of Mexico, right? Well, you can do some research on him. You can figure out like what's going on, like what are the key issues in this civil war? And then you can say, okay, well, what are our capabilities? How do our capabilities help
solve
him
his problem, right? Or at least solve part of it, right? Yeah.
And then we can write the book in Mexican rather than Ukrainian or English, right? I always tell everybody, it's not about getting the information out of you. It's about getting the information into her or into him. And you have to package it in a way they can ingest it. And I think AI is an incredibly powerful tool for that.
And you can do it a lot faster than any of us can do it.
So much faster.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. You and I are very much in line on our thinking, and I love the way that you approach problems and break it down. But the thing that you hit on that is the most important, and for everybody listening to this podcast, Perry hit on something that no other founders readily admit to that I talk to, but they know it inherently, is that time is your most precious commodity. Yeah. And if you're still doing stuff by hand that is monotonous and drudgery, you're just hurting your business.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to say it any more, bluntly than that, but it's solvable. Right? There's a solution right there.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I had a guy who worked. He was my chief of staff when I worked at the hedge fund, and so he'd been working with me for about 4 or 5 months. And he sits down in the chair opposite me, and he goes, "Perry, you waste an incredible amount of time. You do things that you shouldn't be doing." And so we analyzed how I was using my time and like, what should somebody else be doing that I'm doing? And that freed up like 25% of my time right there.
And don't you think every exec and founder should be doing that? Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because we inherently, I've done it too, and I still do it, is do things that I shouldn't be doing. Yeah.
And they creep up on you, and you say, oh, it's easier to do myself, or, I'll just do it this one time or whatever. And it's not good for you. It's not good for your organization. It's not good for the people who work for you, because you can empower them to take on some of these things. The other thing I learned, we had a time management consultant come in because of this, because I just thought this was such a great thing. I wanted to like get it through the organization. So we hired a guy to come in to help us think through this. And so he analyzed me and he said, "Perry, you fill up 100% of your day." And I said, "Yep. I like to be productive." And he said, "That's hurting your productivity. You should only fill up 85% of your time. You should leave 15% unbudgeted time to think, because I worked in the markets. We were reacting, right? And he said, grab 15% of the time back to be just for rumination, just for randomness." Yeah. And I thought that was a pretty good insight.
And you know what? He's right, because I did management consulting for a long time. And I always said, I had a competitive advantage because I didn't have to do the day-to-day, and I could fly above the forest, so I could see where the trees and the openings were. And everybody else that was on the ground, they were so busy, they could never see 5 feet past the front of their face, right? And so that 15% allows you to kind of take the helicopter ride above it and go, oh, absolutely, why didn't I think of that, right? But because you're so busy, you just don't think through it. So I love that 15% thinking time. I actually think that makes you like a lot more than 2x productive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it came from them. That's they let the lab guys just spend 15% of their time, 15% of their budget on whatever interests them. That's how they got sticky notes.
And yeah, think about that. I mean, yeah.
Think about that.
Makes perfect sense. So yeah, you gave me all kinds of ideas about. Are there any other things you do with AI that you think other people would be interested in? I mean, you gave us a bunch.
Well, as I said to you, I'm the world's most ignorant man. And so when I go into a situation where I realize I'm at an information disadvantage, I'll just say, okay, prep me. I'm going into this meeting. I'm going to meet with this guy. Here's his LinkedIn. Here's the things we're going to cover. Give me some talking points.
Yeah.
And so, I look smart in a meeting where if I hadn't done that, again, it's a time management thing. I probably would have wasted a third of the interaction.
Yeah.
This lets you get to the heart of the matter quicker.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I had somebody on the other day, exactly what you're talking about. And they're talking about, this is how healthcare is going to change. You're going to wind up doing a bunch of upfront research. When you go to your doctor, it's not going to be a discovery thing. You're going to be like, look, I've done this. Here's all the things. And it's going to be a much more productive time. So you start to extrapolate that into any industry. And
I agree. I think for medicine and diagnostics and things like this is going to be huge. And
massive.
I would rather have an AI doctor diagnose me than a human
because
doctor.
They can crunch way more patients with your characteristics and your symptoms together.
Yes, exactly. I mean, there's only something like 200 symptoms, but there's like 20,000 things that can be wrong with you, right? So,
yeah,
I think that's going to be massive. And
it is going to be massive.
For drug discovery too.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. So much. Perry, I'm going to have you back. especially when peace is achieved and we start to open up over there. I can't wait to hear all the breakthroughs that you do. But honestly, this has been a delight talking to you. So thank you for spending time with us.
Well, it's been a lot of fun, and thank you for having me. And I'd love to come back. So because I love thinking about this stuff. It's
absolutely
how we move forward. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, hey guys, that wraps up this episode of Future Proofed, and we can't thank you, Perry, enough for spending time with us. I always say this, guys: future proof what matters and automate the rest, and get rid of the drudgery. I think we're going to start adding that. We'll see you guys all on the next episode.
If you're ready to embrace change and lead with innovation, be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Future Proof Podcast.